Originally I wrote this big disclaimer about how this isn't well researched or historically accurate, but then I kept adding bits of research to it. This is still mostly based on my experiences with YouTube for close to its entire existence of 2 decades, and expressing my perspective and frustration with problems on the platform, but it is backed by actual evidence. Advertisers started it. YouTube was fairly hands-off and very unprofitable. The last thing they needed as a business was to have a large moderation team. As a result, videos of death, gore, hate speech, violence, etc. were present in their own isolated corners. Ads would run alongside these awful things. To some degree this always happens. There will always be a small number of people doing awful things and sharing them. The problem was that some prominent creators also produced hate speech, like PewDiePie, who was the most subscribed channel at the time. Ironically, this might not have been nearly so bad if Pepsi didn't release an ad trying to brush police brutality and racism under the rug. The timing couldn't have been worse for YouTube. YouTube developed an image problem, and family-friendly is the magic phrase that makes companies pretend everything is fine. Or in YouTube's case, it's community guidelines. You'll notice I'm highlighting a particular quote. This is from Best Practices for Child and Family Content in the YouTube Help Center. The reason I'm highlighting it is because it plainly states that a high-quality content principle for family content is to have interaction with real-world issues. Specifically, they say to include life lessons, strong characters, encouragement of building social-emotional skills, problem-solving, and independent thinking, and to make it a complete narrative with a clear lesson. Despite that very clear instruction, many real-world issues children regularly have to face are unlikely to be approved by YouTube's algorithm, and YouTube isn't very good at having people intervene to counteract unintended effects of their algorithm. For a simple example, many children have gay parents, but discussing homosexuality is suppressed. Likewise, bullying is prominent. Most children will be confronted with drills and security procedures around school shootings, and suicide is becoming more common. But in a misguided attempt to address those problems, talking about them is forbidden. You don't solve a problem by refusing to talk about it. These policies also leak out of the content produced for children. Even the page I took that quote from shows an example of this. Many families don't have children, but family content is content for children. There's no distinction made between families and children, so distressing topics are to be avoided as much as possible. In YouTube's attempts to pivot towards child-facing content, a demon was unleashed. YouTube mostly relies on creators to mark videos as inappropriate, made for children, or the secret third option of not making either of those distinctions. These options are relatively new, and most people are not going to go back to their older videos to update their metadata. So YouTube automatically decides when to mark videos inappropriate or for children. The thing is, really inappropriate content with lots of color, quick cuts, high-pitched voice acting, and recognizable cartoon characters and children's characters really looks like content made for children to an algorithm. Side note, algorithm, AI, model, all kind of the same thing in this case. Now, regardless of how much the algorithm drove this or how much the production of heinous content drove this, the result is the same. Children were harmed, more advertisers pulled out of YouTube, everyone was harmed, and YouTube decided to make it harder to be a creator. Initially, YouTube changed its policies to require 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours per year for monetization, but didn't remove anyone from monetization who already had it. My channel had peaked with Kerbal Space Ram videos a few years prior, but I was still making some money. In 2019 they went back on this and stripped many channels of monetization, including me. On a personal level, I had about $100 ready to be deposited in my bank account when YouTube opted to keep all of it instead. I don't know how not paying me money I was owed isn't theft, but large companies rarely let the law stop them. Did you know the majority of theft is by large companies from their employees? Wage theft is almost never prosecuted despite being the largest type of theft by far. Anyhow, I could barely afford food at the time, and to me this represents the first shift in YouTube's war from trying to appease advertisers to targeting creators. Small channels like mine don't make much money to begin with, and YouTube normally keeps around 50%. They didn't need to take everything from me, but they did anyhow. The story is the same for a lot of people. Since then, my life generally improved, and I even paid for YouTube Premium, while they still won't pay me what I'm owed. At the same time, I noticed that videos covering important topics were being deleted, and creators were increasingly having to self-censor just to afford to live when producing anything of importance. I remember specifically a racing channel got completely fucked over because the name of a corner on a racetrack sounds similar to a slur. Automatic captions decided that they were using that slur, and then a separate algorithm analyzing the generated captions decided the channel was in violation of community guidelines. In other words, an automated system told itself a bad thing was happening and attacked a channel. I don't remember the names involved, but it stood out in my mind as a particularly good example of how even videos that go nowhere near any topics YouTube considers taboo can still cause significant headache. It's also an example of how AI being given control of the system causes harm. I know AI only started making headlines a few years ago, but its influence has been growing silently on company servers for a decade or more. It's only the recent usage of large language models that made it a popular buzz term, but the same kind of modeling has been going on. This censorship most commonly affects history channels and news outlets that aren't large companies, with exceptions carved out by YouTube for them specifically. Reporting on facts that are uncomfortable is treated as encouraging negativity and harm. If you produce a long and thoughtful video about someone dying by their own hand and use a specific word to name that action, rather than the clunky phrasing I'm using, you will be censored. If you talk about the second leader of the USSR or the leader of Germany during World War II by name, or you mention the name of that political party or the state ideology of that time, you will be censored. Now imagine what listening to that sentence was like for someone who has no idea what I'm referring to. Erasing important details of history is now essentially required. There's even a particular date that can't be mentioned. There was an attack involving planes and buildings, and we're constantly told never to forget it, but if you name it, you will be censored. Even the automatic captioning system censors words frequently, making anyone who relies on them unable to fully engage with videos. This is a bit of a tangent, but it's my video and you're forced to watch it. Authoritarianism thrives on you giving up your power willingly. By censoring the names of Stalin, Hitler, Nazis, the Third Reich, 9/11, Saddam Hussein, I am ceding my rights to YouTube and signaling that it's perfectly okay to never mention suicide. Don't censor yourself just because they say it's wrong to discuss the Palestinian genocide or talk about COVID-19's continued harm that is being ignored. This isn't an overblown comparison. This is how authoritarian regimes hold on to power. It's not only governments that take away your power, it's companies under them and in support of them. I'm linking to a good article about this in the description. Oh, sorry, not the description. See, a while back YouTube decided to threaten me for linking to the New York Times, and I will not let them live it down. Now I put all links and references in a separate webpage, as well as the script when I make these videos. I shouldn't have to do this, but I do, for my own safety. I said this already, but I really want to reiterate it because it's really important. Problems are solved by talking about them. Whenever a company or government seeks to avoid talking about difficult issues, it is to hide the problem and pretend it doesn't exist. For example, this is why almost no one talks about systemic racism, because we all assume that if we don't talk about racism, it's not happening. If you don't see it happening in your face, we pretend it's not there. Anyhow, the next thing YouTube attacked was ad blockers. To be fair, that's supposed to be what keeps the site running, though I'd argue the majority of YouTube's existence being unprofitable highlights that ad revenue was never required. The problem from my perspective is threefold. 1. Very few people use ad blockers despite how beneficial they are, and how they most often are capable of blocking anti-ad block messages. 2. They also started increasing the price of YouTube Premium, which drives people away, some of which will turn to ad blockers. 3. They started displaying anti-ad block messages and ads to paying users. I stopped paying for Premium because I kept getting ads even though I wasn't supposed to. Also, they raised the price and I couldn't afford it. Don't forget, I just was living under a threat of homelessness for years. Well, about a year and a half. Oh, and they also increased the number of ads being run, which encourages more people to use adblock. Ironically, the most common ad I see these days is for ad blockers. You would think that if adblock was actually hurting YouTube, they wouldn't allow advertisers to advertise adblock, right? Like, that just seems stupid. Then again, Elsagate videos were some of the most watched videos on the entire site, and YouTube somehow didn't manage to moderate that. If they aren't checking the most popular videos, what are they checking? Have you ever heard of the Streisand effect? When you try to censor something in public, the public responds by sharing it more. For example, there's a variety of ways to watch YouTube without opening its official apps or going to the website. My favorite is GrayJ, though it unfortunately still has a lot of problems. Ironically, YouTube claims that teaching someone how to watch YouTube without ads is harmful or dangerous content. So if I tell you how to purchase YouTube Premium, I'd be violating YouTube's terms of service, because that's how to avoid watching it with ads. I also can't tell you how to install or use NewPipe, Invidious, or any of several other options for bypassing YouTube's ads. An interesting example of how community guidelines are often a double standard is that a video by Linus Tech Tips about watching YouTube ad-free got taken down, but there are plenty of versions of it still on YouTube. For some reason it violates the terms of service when he did it, but not when other people re-upload his video. And finally, YouTube's war against people. This is what inspired me to make this video. Suddenly, without warning, YouTube keeps presenting me with a page asking me to sign in with the thin excuse of this being an anti-bot mechanism. This happens across multiple devices, whether or not I use a VPN, and has been happening to more people than just me. It also has actually shown up while I'm signed in, ironically. YouTube's increasingly aggressive approach to chasing profit has started directly attacking individual people for not having the right device, or browser, or IP address to allow watching YouTube. The platform is becoming more closed instead of open. Ironically, this is probably a good thing for me. See, I have a history of behavioral addictions, one of which is watching far too much YouTube. YouTube is now pushing me to leave the platform more and more, which is probably good for my mental health. It also reminds me not to trust a company or platform, which is an important lesson I keep having to learn again and again. And I've been steadily working towards making more things I care about accessible without a single company being able to control it. This is why videos like this one are available on a GitHub Pages link as well as on YouTube. It's a very time-consuming process, and I make a lot of mistakes, such as accidentally fucking up my backup system and losing a lot of data. But it's worth it, and it makes me happy to do things I care about regardless of what's popular. Up till now, I've been very close to losing my home. The danger is still only kept at bay by a few months of savings, but it seems a lot less likely now than it did a few months ago. That said, I did just have a car get totaled and then get totaled again, so I'm a little scared. Anyhow, thank you to everyone who helped out. I guess maybe I should beg for sharing the video instead this time? You do what you want. So I wrote this script about 3 weeks ago, right around the time a critical mistake cost me all my data. I've been kind of really depressed and overwhelmed by that, and other things that have happened in my personal life recently. I have some bits of script that hit the editing room floor and other details I'd like to mention related to this, but posting something is better than nothing. So this video is done. I have some notes for more to say about this, and hopefully I can say more in the future, but I'm a fake video essayist and I don't have the ability to follow through at this time. I mean, hell, this video is a lot longer than the others I've produced of this style, and it's just, it's difficult for me. But one small thing did change since then, and I feel it belongs here too. The most recent negative change I've seen is ignoring every indication of the language a user has selected and choosing Spanish instead. See, when you load a video, the YouTube server receives your IP address, which is associated with a geographical location where there is most often a common language spoken. That's actually a very bad way to select language for a variety of reasons, but most websites use it. Your browser also reports what language it is configured to use, what alternate languages it's been configured to accept as secondary preferences, and even what language your OS is using sometimes. This is the most reliable way of determining what language to present to user when content is available in multiple languages, but there's even a third layer in YouTube's own settings which allows you to configure the language you use on YouTube. Over the past few days, whenever I open a video, if it has a generated Spanish translation, that is selected even though I have mostly only watched English videos. I only speak English after all. All of my devices and settings are thus configured to use English, and when I use a VPN, I'm usually connected through an IP address located in a place that predominantly uses English. Again, that last one really shouldn't matter, but tech companies don't care about minorities and happily use the most common language based on an assumed location. And yet, despite every indication saying, I speak English and only English, YouTube insists that I should use Spanish. To be fair, I keep telling myself I need to learn Spanish, and it's good to learn multiple languages. So anyhow, this feature is actually a really good concept. Allowing more people a higher chance of understanding each other despite language barriers is a good goal. There are definitely a lot of problems with machine translation, but having a poor automated system is better than having nothing. But why, oh why does it trigger when it shouldn't? I've got no answer for this. I'm mostly just confused and a little annoyed. Anyhow, thanks for watching. Holy crap, this script got to almost 4,000 words before I stopped. I can't believe even more insanity is happening. This is a small subset of the problems with YouTube, but I expected it to be resolved much quicker, and right now it looks like the resolution is that only some people are getting their monetization restored, instead of actually fixing the problem. If you didn't know, Warner Brothers decided to mass claim Minecraft videos as a violation of copyright for the Minecraft movie that isn't out yet. Basically, because some of the same music is used, Content ID can't recognize that this new copyright is not the same thing, and it's fucking over a bunch of people. Instead of undoing the problem, only some videos are being released, and only when YouTubers are actually fighting back. I'm kind of laughing because the only reason I'm not affected by this is because YouTube already took away all of my income, so Warner Brothers can't take even more of it away. Also, did you know that if you make a minor mistake when reporting on facts, you can be sued out of existence? But also, if you use the word allegedly when talking about things companies are doing, you can sorta kinda get away with it. I don't know, it's fucking weird. Fortunately, nobody knows who I am, so I'm kind of okay. See, when you load a video, the YouTube server fuck me.